Hi, I'm Megan Savas with Follow the Beader, and today we're going to learn 2 different styles of pearl knotting. Today I'm going to show you 2 different styles of pearl knotting. So to follow along, you're going to need a bead awl, like this tulip beading awl that is a super fine with an ultra sharp tip. Pearl knotting tweezers, I prefer this 6-inch curved head variety, but a lot of shorter ones will come in some beading kits, and there's nothing wrong with that, and sometimes they're straight. Nothing wrong with that either. Matter of personal preference. 1 strand of pearls. I've chosen these natural pearls in a 5 or 6 millimeter potato style, but you could use whatever you like. Pearl cord that matches your pearls. This is the Griffin silk cord, natural silk, that already has the twisted beading needle that is actually already attached. I'm using the number 6 because it fits snugly with my beads, but you may need a different size depending on the size of your beads. Bead tips. I prefer the clamshell variety. As you can see, it has 2 little clamshells and a hook, and this is going to be at either end of your project and will actually attach your clasp to the project. They also make a variety that looks like a cup with a hole in the center that has usually its own hook on it, and there's nothing wrong with using those. I just prefer the clamshell style because it hides my knot. Chosen this 10 millimeter sterling silver box clasp in a crystal AB color because it's neutral and it's about the right size for my beads. You'll need GS Hypo Cement to dab on the end knots that are actually going to go into the clamshells. It's just for safety. And a pair of scissors that can cut your cord. Optionally, you may want to use a mighty crimper and a round nose plier to help you to attach your clasp and close your clamshells. To start with, I want you to take all of your thread off of its card. These cards have about 2 meters or 6.5 feet-ish on them, and you will be working with the entirety of the length. I want you to sort of pull and straighten your thread. You're not going to get all the kinks out, but don't worry about that because it's not really going to matter for our pearl knotting. And there's our wire needle. We're going to start with the tweezer, and then we're going to move on to the awl. Any pearl knotting that requires a clamshell, you can add the clamshell later, but I prefer to add it first. And the way that I do that is I take the end, this is the end that does not have the needle on it, and you're literally going to do an overhand knot. So you're going to do over, under, around, and through within the first few inches, and pull that up tight. Is that a good pull? We're going to need a second knot on top of this knot, or at least as close as possible, because usually the hole in the clamshell is quite a bit wider than a hole in, say, a regular bead or a natural pearl. So we're just going to do with the knot at the sort of apex of the side of your finger. We're going to go over, under, around, and through, and start pulling that up. Now if you're gentle, you can get it to where you see that it's going to actually end up right on top. I'm going to gently pull, give that a little tug with my fingernail. So once you have your double knot, you're going to take your GS Hypo Cement just put a little dab on the knot. Don't overdo it too much. Just like so. And set that aside for a second to dry. Now once that's sat there for a second, I want you to take your clamshell and with the actual clamshell facing up, I want you to poke your wire needle down into it and put it all the way down to your knot. See, and it'll sit right in there. Now, pro knotting for the most part really is just overhand knotting, or at least this style is overhand knotting. The trick is to actually get the knot up close to where it needs to be, which is a little tougher than you'd think it is. So to start with, I'm going to, with my tail thread and clamshell facing up, go over, under, around, and through. And that's going to form this big loop with my bead, or my finding in this case, on the other side. So I want you to pick up your tweezers, go through the hole, and I want you to, with the tip of your tweezers, snug up as close as you can against your clamshell and start pulling the loop. If it gets stuck like mine just did, just pull it out, slide it down there. Be careful that it doesn't slide down past your clamshell. You see I've got the knot up pretty close. I'm going to pull out my pliers and gently slide it up to the knot and pull. And that's going to give me a perfect knot. See? I think we're only going to need one in this case, but in some cases you need two. But I think we're going to be fine there. So go ahead and thread one of your pearls. Slide it all the way down to the knot you just made. Tail thread or working thread sort of facing up. I want you to go over, under, around, and through. Okay, that's going to give you this big knot, this big loop. It's going to form your knot. Pick up your pliers, go through the loop. Snug all the way up against your bead, and make sure that your bead is also snug against the other knot that you just made, and begin to pull it up like so. Take out your pliers, gently slide close to the tip of your plier and pull. I'm sort of pushing and pulling in opposition when I'm doing that, but I don't do that until I know I'm right up against where I need my knot to be. To expedite the process a little, you can go ahead and thread a few beads on so that you can just slide them down and knot. Can you hear my beads snick sort of at the bottom of there? That's pretty much how I know that I have the right size of thread, because when I feel that snick at the bottom of my needle, I know that the thread is actually filling up the hole, and that's really what I want. So just leave all of the beads except for the one that you want to be working with down near the needle, if your thread is the right size, it shouldn't be any problem for them to not fall off. And slide the bead that you want to work with down to your next one. So make sure that's as snug up against the knot as it can be, and go over, under, around, and through. Through the hole, like so. Snug up against, really close to the tip of your plier, close to the tip of your knotting tool, forgive me, and begin to gently pull up. Once you get pretty close up there, pull out, snug up, and pull in opposition, like so. Now I'm going to do a couple more with this technique before moving on to the next technique, and just so that you can get an idea of the cadence of it. Sometimes if my loop is a little too big, I will make it a little smaller, which is what you just saw there. That's that. Now you notice that my beads kind of curve a little bit. Don't worry too much about that, because the knots will relax with a little bit of wear or a little hanging while you're photographing them, or if they're hanging in your jewelry box. So don't worry too much about that. Now we're going to move on to the awl style of knotting. And I suppose that essentially you're doing the exact same thing. Still doing over, under, around, and through, but instead of grabbing the thread inside of the loop, you're essentially repositioning the loop. So I'm gonna push my bead down, over, under, around, and through. Okay. Take my awl. I'm going to go through it. I kind of hold on with a finger while I'm doing this pulling, but as you can see, I'm really just controlling where the knot is. So once I get down this far, take out the awl, and I pull and snug up with my fingernail. Can you use a plier for that part? Absolutely, you can. There's nothing wrong with that. Matter of personal preference, so you can kind of do two different tools. So let's see that again. Under, around, and through, and kind of pull that up a little closer. Put your awl into the loop and gently pull to get close, and then snug up. Once you've finished the length of your piece, go ahead and knot after the last purl so that your clamshell isn't scraping it. And then I want you to take your clamshell And with the hook facing up and the clamshell actually facing up like this, I want you to go up through the bottom and slide it down as if it were a pearl. And then go ahead and do your overhand knot. And then pretending that the clamshell is the pearl, the inside of the clamshell, that is, I want you to snug the tip of your tool right down in there and gently pull up your knot. Be careful that it doesn't go over the clamshell. And once it gets pretty close in there, I want you to gently pull out and knot down into it. And then you'll want to do that a second time for sure. Remember doing 2 on the first one before you added your clamshell to the first side? Well, this is the same. We want 2 in there to make sure that it's snug up, that it has enough bulk. And then we're going to go ahead and dab the knot with our GS Hypo Cement.
Set that aside to dry.
Now we're going to talk a little bit about attaching our clasp, which is simple. And I do use 2 tools to actually help me along in this case, and that is the Mighty Crimper and the Round Nose Plier. First you'll want to take and snip your thread very close. You definitely do not want it to be sticking up out of your clamshell. Take your clasp, put it onto the hook of the clamshell, and then you can take your round nose plier and gently sort of round this down towards your clamshell so that it is a little more hooked. And then if you take just the C part, if you look at your Mighty Crimper, you see that I have teeth in one and no teeth in the other. You want the one that's closest to the tip that has no teeth. And I don't know if I can get it worked around there. You can essentially just fit that C around the clamshell, close it a little bit if you need to get a hold of it, and just gently close. If you need to reposition it just a little bit. But the C shape is going to keep the round shape of your bead. Don't be forceful with it, and your clasp is probably going to be, you know, like it has a little wiggle room, but it's not like flopping around. And that's how you attach your clasp.
Just repeat for the other side.